All righty. Hello. Welcome, gang. We got Michael Fowlkes with us as usual on Tuesdays. And then we may or we may not be getting a special guest. And I'll let you know if he is going to make it because he's having trouble with his camera. But Michael, we're going to watch a history of sport fishing today, chapter 2 for a little while.
Yes, sir. Thanks for having me on, Dave.
So what can we expect? Chapter 2, what's it all about?
It's pretty damn exciting. It's a good chapter. It's really as we started to get out of the very rudimentary, basic, the fundamentals of how the sport evolved from an act of survival into what it is today. It's the beginning of the evolution of reels and rods and line and boats and tackle. It's a pretty good baseline show. I'm excited about showing it to everybody, getting feedback. And please, guys, if you're watching and you have any questions, now's the time. Fire away.
Absolutely, gang. And the thing I love is the way that this starts out. Chapter 2 is that clicker. If that doesn't get you fired up, boy, you probably haven't really spent much time fishing, because I'll tell you what, there's nothing like that clicker.
That's a universal sound, isn't it?
It is. Here, you guys, we're going to start out. And if you guys have any questions or anything going on here, just let us know. But we're going to start out watching this. And then if our special guest does join us, we'll jump in with him. But check this out here, gang. This is the beginning of chapter 2. And you can kind of describe it, Michael. How do you title it?
The Byte, I think, isn't it? I don't know.
The survival.
The throbbing excitement of success and the inspiration that will drive the fishermen out in the first light of tomorrow with the eternal hope that it will be their day for the king of fish. And on every boat, fishermen wait excitedly for the first strikes of the day.
It's all about the bite. It's also setting the hook. Love to set the hook. It's putting on the right bait, getting bit, setting the hook, or getting that first bend out of the rod.
It's about the initial hookup.
It's one of the most exciting moments anybody can have ever.
When you see something that size, you freak
out.
All
right, Steven's with us.
Bigger than you.
Welcome. Welcome, Steven.
Thanks for having me, guys.
Hey, we're stoked, man. We are stoked to have you with us. So Michael Fowlkes produced a TV show in Southern California for a very, very long time. And most of us grew up watching his show. Now, I know you've been in the Midwest and in Florida most of your life, so you probably aren't familiar with Michael's show, but it was the thing to watch in Southern California. And now he's made a new series called The History of Sport Fishing. But before that, it was Inside Sport Fishing with Michael Fowlkes, and he went all over the place fishing. So that's why he's my co-host of the show, Steven, on Tuesdays. But we are stoked to have you. Alligator hunter, redfish hunter, tournament hunter, bear, pigs, whatever swims or walks. You're pretty much a hunter for it, aren't you?
In the state of Florida, yes, sir. I like to call myself one of the true natives down here. You know, my born and raised down here, and so are my folks. It's kind of rare to find true Floridians anymore. And I actually just returned home here about 6 months ago, living in Texas the past few years, and very, very happy to be back.
Absolutely. I'm super excited to have you on the show today. We've wanted to have you on the show for a very, very long time. You've kind of danced around the fact that you were going to be with us, and today you are here. Merry Christmas.
Wow.
Merry Christmas.
I don't know if I go that far. I don't know that much.
Well, you've got to do stuff that most of us only dream about, like alligator hunting. And you spend a ton of time in the Keys and in the Everglades and down there where we can't even imagine what lives there. And I can't deal with it because of the bugs. I'm just totally anti-bug. I don't know if you are, Michael, but
I can't stand the mosquitoes.
So you can tell us all about it, Steven, and we'll just kind of listen.
Yeah, y'all definitely can't go down there then. it can be quite the brutal place, but it also can be quite the magical place. So going back to kind of where it started for me, I was extremely lucky and fortunate. Didn't realize how lucky I was, honestly, until I became an adult. Had my dad, big time outdoorsman, fished a ton, hunted a little bit. And then I had a grandfather that was an unbelievable bass fisherman over, North Tampa area. And that's where I grew up, a little town called Atlanta Lakes. It's been swallowed by Tampa now, but back several years ago, it was a little, sleepy little town. But growing up, my dad sort of going to the Glades in the late 70s. By the time I was born, took me down there in the mid 80s. And as I tell everyone, it's my heaven on earth. It's amazing. It's one of the most magical places in North America, in my opinion. It's one of the last great wildernesses, if you will. Unfortunately, GPSs have kind of shrunk the place a little bit, but it's still super, super magical. There's so many things that set it apart. Look, we've all caught fish. We've all caught fish that most people probably wouldn't believe our stories and that kind of stuff. The people that get that place are the ones that don't have to catch a fish when they go there to see it. It's that magical. Just the boat ride back in the backcountry of the Glades, spending time down there at night, and so forth is what it's about. Like I said, my dad's, I think, fixing to celebrate his 47th year going down. This is my 39th year going down there. It's a pretty neat place. We're actually going next week, or I shouldn't say next week. We're leaving Christmas Day, driving down and doing 5 nights in the backcountry.
Nice.
So,
Yeah,
have y'all ever even heard anything about it down there, or what do you know about it? I don't want to puke all over you and pointless, but I mean,
no, we're excited about what you're going to share with us today, because really, Michael and I, we spent most of our lives working on boats and fishing on boats here on the West Coast. We've had a very, very small taste of what's going on down there, but the whole thing, the alligators, the animals that live in the Everglades, the snakes, and then 900 different varieties of fish that live down there. We can't even comprehend what you get to see on a daily basis that Michael and I, most of that stuff scares the hell out of us, to be perfectly honest.
It's all relative, right? So, I mean, when I started working at Promar here several years ago, I remember going out and fishing Catalina for the first time and, catching all this calico. And I'm like, it's a pissed off grouper. It's what it looked like to me that we used to grow up catching in 20-foot water here. But it's the same idea. First time I saw a sea lion, I was like, what is this all about? So, and great whites y'all have over there? No, thank you. I don't want no part of that. Give me a 12-foot alligator all day. I'll deal
nuts.
with them. No big sharks. But what sets the Glades apart? You've got the mix of both worlds. You got the freshwater world mixing with the saltwater world. Essentially, without getting into the politics of it too far and stuff, the state of Florida, all it is I kind of joke with it. It's a giant sandbar. That's all it is. The furthest you can be from saltwater and still be in the state is like 76 miles. So essentially, it's a sandbar that separates the Gulf from the Atlantic. I kind of joke in calling that, but it is a sandbar, and it's a filtration system. It's the best filtration system literally in North America. All that water is supposed to flow from Central Florida through South Florida and go out in the Glades. The Corps of Engineers royally screwed it up a long time ago and, built the channels going out both sides of Lake Okeechobee and stopped the flow of natural water. There's an organization called Captains for Clean Water that's doing a fantastic job fighting the good fight for all the great anglers in the state. And the stuff they've already done is amazing. They're still fighting a lot of stuff. But they're trying to correct that flow and get the fresh water going from Okeechobee through south into the Glades. So what happens with that water comes through the sawgrass, dumps in the top part of the Glades. It then mixes with all the saltwater Gulf Coast water coming in from the Gulf side, and it mixes together. And that's what we call the magical place, called the backcountry of the Everglades. That's where my dad started going in the 70s. That's where I've been going since the mid 80s. And the wintertime is when it gets really special. And what I'm referring to that is the water temperatures drop a little bit. So all the coastal snook, for example, they can't take cold water at all. I mean, water temp drops below 60, they're freaking, right? Like they're hurting bad. You get below 58, they're dead. Their gills are flying out, and they're going to dead and be belly up within no time at all. So to combat and try to get warm, they run inland. They get inland back in the back bays that have mud bottoms, and they lay up and they let that sun heat that water up, and they stay warm. So their natural migration is to go from the coastal areas on the beaches, migrate backwards or into the backcountry, and a snook can go 100% pure fresh water. They're snooking like Okeechobee, for example. And those fish push back into the backcountry of the glades. The same time, there's already alligator gar, largemouth bass, bluegill, cichlids that are introduced down there. And so you have this magical place where both worlds interact. Quick story, when I was a little kid, the first trip down there, there's a creek roughly 25 miles back. It's called Alligator Creek. It joins a bunch of big bays, and it's inland, probably 5 or 6 miles. I remember going to it as a kid. I'm on the front of this little bitty boat, a little 14-foot boat with a 25 on the back. And we go into the front of the creek, and there's a manatee at the mouth. Cool. Okay. Go into the creek, halfway down, there's 2 or 3 gators on the bank. Get out the far side, and a black tip shark swims in the front of the creek. While in there, we caught a dozen snook, a couple speckled trout, saw 2 or 3 largemouth bass. So you have this crazy world of the best freshwater in the state of Florida mixed with the best saltwater in the world. That's what makes it so special.
That is absolutely incredible, just to see that many different types of fish right there.
Yeah, it's and I took it for granted. I'll be the first to admit it. You know, my dad was taking me down there 2 to 3 times a year when I was a little kid. By the time I was a teenager, we were down there 7, 8 times a year. I sat down one time and tried to figure out how many nights I've spent camping in the backcountry, and I had to double check my math. But I mean, you do the math to where I was averaging 5 trips a year and 3 nights each trip, and I've been doing it for 30 plus years. It's a lot of nights, right? I mean, you're flirting with 300 plus nights camped in the backcountry. And it's you know, you look at the true gladesmen that built that place and cut into it and made it what it is. You know, I'm kind of trying to respect them and still treat the glades that way. Meaning my dad taught me how to run it before GPSs. You know, there was a chart in hand and tiller with a 25 and go across the bays. You found oyster bars the hard way by hitting them. You didn't know where they were unless you saw it on a chart. A lot of guys have the technology, have it pretty easy, but my dad taught me how to run in the dark when I was probably 13. And I'm talking 30 miles back from Chalklowski and going. And it's something I like to hang my hat on. And I'm proud to show my dad showed me how to do that. And it's, you know, that Simrad may not turn on one day when you're running around back there and you need to go get home. One of those deals.
You're running 30 knots in the dark.
Yeah, I mean, it's, I was more bullish in my younger age. So I got an 18-foot Hughes Redfisher, which, you know, they were making flats boats before a lot of the companies out there were, I almost call it the Camry of the boating world, meaning, you know, no one really knew what a Ford and Sedan was until Camry Toyota built one, and now everyone copied it. Hughes is the same way. Bob Hughes built the first true flats boat, 50 years ago. And they were pulling around Biscayne Bay. That boat's really a backcountry boat. Saw the first one when I was 14. You know, I told my dad I'm an old one day, and he kind of laughed at me. I'm on my 3rd one, including a bay boat now. I got both parked in the driveway. But that Hughes I have, when I got it, oh gosh, she's 15, 16 years old now. It's got a 150 on it, and it got nicknamed the Blue Bullet for a reason, because I knew 2 speeds, go and stop, and I was running the backcountry in the dark at 50. You know, probably wasn't the smartest thing in the world to do, but I kind of pull up the throttle a little older I've gotten. But yeah, it's neat.
Brave and crazy wings of youth.
Yes, exactly. Some things you learn the hard way, right? So I'm not gonna say I haven't never hit anything. I've hit plenty of oyster bars that I didn't know were there.
Like you said, you find them when you hit them.
Yeah, for sure. But give you more on the glades. It's I got tied up in the history of it several years ago. It was the wild, wild west of Florida. So I mean, I'm not sure how many folks you have on here with the East Coast, but there's a reason why the Tampa Bay Buccaneers are called the Buccaneers. It was the swashbuck, you know, it was the pirate hub was Tampa, right? A lot of people in the early 1900s fled to Florida to get away from the law because there was no law down here. When the times got very, very hard in the 20s, a lot of people just kind of sold everything and disappeared in glades and homestead and lived back there. And that's where it's crazy. That's how the glades were made and how the campsites were made originally. They were Seminole Indian mounds. Right. So the Seminole Indians were the main tribe in South Florida, and they would either make mounds in the backcountry. They would actually bring shell in by canoe inland 3, 4, 5 miles and make humps on it on higher ground to get their camp above tidal line. and they would live there. Well, as white men invaded, Florida, just like they did everywhere else, they pushed a lot of the Indians out. White men then took over a lot of those sites, and made homesteads. So, for example, the one campsite that we love camping at is called Darwin's Place. It's roughly 18 to 20 miles back by boat ride. And old man Darwin lived there. He was a hermit. He actually lived there till like the late 70s. Jeez. When he passed, the park came in and turned into the campsite. There's another place called Watson's Place. It's on Chatham River. It was the biggest house and the biggest property there, gosh, forever. And there's all kinds of books you can read out there called Killing Mr. Watson. There's all kinds of stories on it. But there was a 2-story house there, I want to say from the mid 1800s through the early 1900s. It finally tore it down when the park took over. When the park took over in the 70s, they pushed most of these homesteads out and these structures out and turned them into campsites. And so there's a backcountry natural water trail that you can drive from Chokoloskee Island all the way to Flamingo. And oh gosh, I think there's as many as 30 sites, maybe 25, 30 sites. Not all of them are land. A lot of them are chickies, aka docks that you can pull up to with covers on and put your tents on. But it's littered through the national park. And it's boat access only, all of it.
So would you say that your dad did you a favor when you were young, growing up, the way you grew up? Because the thing that we're missing today is the children.
So I could not agree more, Dave. So that is why I live back in Florida now. So life, work, and just what it is, took my family and I to Texas. We were there 11 years. It was a great place for my daughter to kind of grow up, and she's now 19 and going to college and playing volleyball. It's a volleyball mecca. Sweet. It was great. But I was sitting there watching my son not grow up like me. And I was like, nope, not having it. My dad did me a huge service. I had no idea how good of a service, introducing me and showing me to the way I grew up. Call it redneck, call it country, call it whatever hell you want to. Call it crazy Florida man. That's how I grew up. I grew up with a fishing pole in my hand, fishing 5 or 6 days a week. I had the bass named in all my neighborhood ponds, catching redfish and snook. Wasn't scared to grab an alligator. I watched him grab an alligator when I was 6 years old, and my mom's yelling at me or yelling at him, "Don't do that," because the next day I caught the same gator when I was 6 by myself. It's how I grew up, and I saw, honestly, my son not experiencing that, living in the city in Dallas. And we came back, and I've watched him grow inside 6 months, probably more than I have any other time. Driving my flats boat, back in my Pathfinder off, catching redfish, sight fishing stuff. He's begging me to go gator hunting next season. We're going to do that. He killed his first 8-point buck sitting by himself this year. So yeah, Dave, 100%.
Yeah. Well, Matt Bradley, I don't know if you guys know Matt or not. He was on Deadliest Catch, worked on the Northwestern. He summed it up perfect. I was talking to him on the phone the other day. He summed it up perfect. He said, when I was 13, I was stealing my mom's car. My 13-year-old son right now is afraid to go out in the backyard and take out the trash because it's dark.
Yeah. So,
my God, I'm like, kids today don't have a clue. I mean, my son, he's 32. He tells me that he's the only one in his group and there's a big group of them that knows how to change a tire.
Yeah,
God,
that's definitely not my son, and I've worked very hard at it. I said, dude, don't be the normal. Don't be like the kids in your classroom. Don't be a little butthead, basically, is what I tell him. I go, be respect just some people who got some gray hair that are around you, and listen to them. He's actually the opposite. He's so much into stuff, I have to pump the brakes on him. I find my tools and I find my stuff, and I find stuff broken because he digs into things so much he kind of uses them. One of my goals here in the next probably 6 months or so is to buy an old beater John boat, and we're going to rebuild it, and it's going to be his first skiff. I had my first skiff when I was 12, with a little 25 on the back, and my gosh, that I experienced just good times and bads, and learned a ton of stuff on that boat. That's what he's going to do. So when we moved back to Florida, I lived in Fernandez Beach, which is just north of Jacksonville. I am 1.4 miles from a boat launch and 3 miles from another one, and 2 boats sitting in the driveway. And I was changing our life how it was 6 months ago to come live here and do this. I go pick him up from school for it when the time changes and it don't get dark till 8. One of the funny stories we had, it was October, the weekend before the time changed, or 2 weeks before time change, and he had a spelling test that day this past fall. And I went and picked him up, and he goes to school on the island in Fernandina Beach, and we're on the mainland side. And we were coming back over. The tide's perfect, water's falling. I'm like, oh man, they're going to be tailing. Like it's good right now. And when I mean tailing redfish. And he's like, well, can we go? And I was like, you got a spelling test tomorrow. And he's like, yeah. I'm like, fine, get your stuff. I'm backing the boat up. You got 15 minutes to be in the boat. We're going. And we studied for his tests while catching redfish that evening, and he got 100 on the test next day. So
Yeah.
so it worked.
Good job, Dad.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying, and what Steven's telling you guys, and Michael and I, we talk about it on this show every Tuesday. It's all about getting our kids involved, because right now there is an entity in the United States of America that wants to abolish fishing and hunting, and they want to do it so bad that they've figured out a way that they'll tax us, cause us to spend so much money on licensing, but some of us can still do it. So now they just, instead of, well, we can't financially ruin them, so we'll just take it away. We'll make it so it's impossible for them to do it. And if we don't educate our children, by the time your son is your age, they'll be thinking, my dad and I used to fish when I was little, and people will go, what's fishing? Oh, well, it's this thing. You got to watch the history of sport fishing to know what it is, because we don't get to do that in America anymore, and that would suck.
Yeah, it's a scary thought. I'm happy to see DeSantis as our governor in Florida. That dude goes to, from what, in my opinion, I'm sure I can be, contradicted, but that dude goes to bat for the angler in the state. I mean, most recently it was here, 45 days ago. He had a press conference actually in Fernandina Beach at a marina. And to give a little bit of backstory, through a lot of things he was doing, and I'm sure Trump support helped it, he was given control. The state of Florida was given control of the red snapper fishery in the Gulf of Mexico.
Sweet.
5-6 years ago, I think it was like a 20 or 30-day season. Don't quote me on that. And it's gotten better and better and better. This year, it was the longest season ever. It was like 134 days. It's phenomenal.
Wow.
And it's because they gave the control to the state of Florida to manage the fishery in the Gulf for the red snapper. Well, guess what? They're pushing to where it looks like it's going to pass. They're going to give them also control in the Atlantic. It's going to control all South Carolina, Georgia, and Florida waters and the Atlantic for red snapper. It's ridiculous. The red snapper season up until hopefully in 26 was either 1 or 2 days long. That's it. 1 or 2 days, you can go harvest a red snapper in the Atlantic. It's stupid. There's so many fish out there, all the captains. So they had to actually, put things in place. And DeSantis was the one who was doing it, where there were several hired boats doing a ton of research over multiple years to document how many fish are out there in the Atlantic. The numbers are mind-boggling. They're literally pulling red snapper off the bottom in 150 foot of water. There's so many of them, chumming them up and catching them on top of our plugs. There's guys on video doing it. You shouldn't be catching a red snapper on top of a plug, because there's so
not
many
from 150 feet.
So what's that?
Not from 150 feet down.
No, they chum them up off the bottom. They've been doing it in the Gulf for years, but they've been chumming them up off the bottom in the Atlantic to where they're hand feeding them behind the boat. And these are 20-pound red snapper. It's crazy.
Unbelievable.
Like one of the captains I fished against forever in tournaments, Cody Chevis, it's out of the west coast of Florida. He's got video out there where he's hand feeding, literally, like you would catch yellowtail snapper in the Keys. He's doing it with red snapper, American red snapper, like 20 pounds.
That is cool.
So I digress. There's going to be a season this year for the first time in the Atlantic that's supposed to be, I think, 34 days long, opening up Memorial Day weekend. First, for a certain time period. They're going to shut it down in July because they spawn, I want to say late July. And then after that, open it up every weekend through, I think it's Labor Day, and then every weekend through like October. They're going to do it. So, and DeSantis, it's not stupid. It's an economical impact. It's huge. The fishing business in the state is massive, billions of dollars. And so he's watched the impact on the Florida Panhandle on the west coast of Florida, what they've benefited from the red snapper. Now you're rolling that over to the East Coast. So I can't wait, honestly. A business, working with Promar, I can't wait to see what the business is going to be like. It's going to be phenomenal. And just the hotels and people, everyone here, I don't want more folks to come to Florida, but it also it's a nice state to live in because there's a lot of money pouring in.
Well, Steve, that's a perfect example of management through science, as opposed to management through politics. And out here on the West Coast, we got Newscomb, who's just the opposite. I mean, he's bent on just eliminating the sport, period. So it's just complete contrast between Florida and California.
Yeah, it's crazy. I'm not sure if y'all driven to the state anytime recently. When you enter the state of Florida, the quote across the bottom, it says "Welcome to the free state of
I
Florida."
love it.
It says that on our signs coming into our state.
And that's
it's a different world.
You guys have to show ID to vote out there, right? No, you got to have ID to vote. We don't have that in California.
Oh, to vote. Yes, I'm sorry. I had to vote. Yes. Oh, yeah. You can't just walk into any precinct and you have to show you. And we did in Texas as well too.
Yeah,
you had to show
that's an amazing thing. You have to have ID for everything we do, except in California. If you get caught asking someone for their ID to vote, you're going to go to a federal penitentiary. That's crazy. That's crazy.
We're working on a petition right now to make it that you have to have an ID to vote, but still need another 100,000 signatures before the 31st to get it on the ballot. But
it's hard to imagine that you don't.
I know.
Isn't it?
It's because they brought in like 10 million aliens that they know will vote Democratic, and that's why they have them in here, and that's why they don't want to have IDs. You know, it's insane. Don't even get me started on the politics.
And well.
No, let's not go. Let's keep it fun about fishing. I hear you. I'm the same way.
Well, unfortunately, in California, it's a political fishing. We're getting our rights pushed out. And Michael and we talk about the history of sport fishing all the time. And I show you a little piece of Michael's movie right now, Stephen, and then we'll go back. I want to talk to you about tournament fish and redfish, how many redfish you see in a day, stuff like that. I want to talk about that. But
sure.
This fishing community, listen to this. Just watch this. This is incredible.
As the colonies were being established, fishing was used as a way to feed families. There was no leisure time among these new settlers to practice fishing as an art form or a sport. For them, fishing meant survival. Coarse bait fishing was often done by children and women, as the men did the hard labor of clearing the land and building cabins. It was not until after the colonies were becoming well established and greater numbers of high-born, aristocratic English political and military leaders arrived that these elite few first began fly fishing for sport on American waters. In 1732, a few of the earliest fly fishermen living in the British colony of Pennsylvania wanted to secure a place for themselves to fish away from the growing townships. Since much of the land outside of the cities was still inhabited by Native Americans, they went to Chief Tammany of the local Delaware tribe of the Lenape Indians and established a treaty with the tribe, allowing them to fish undisturbed along the scenic section of the Schuylkill River in what is now Philadelphia. A few years later, they built a clubhouse dubbed the Castle, thus establishing the first fishing club in the Americas. The club remains today the oldest continuously operating social club in the English-speaking world. The club's historians have kept one of the most complete sets of records of any social organization in history. Reading the roster of the club's members in the years leading up to the Revolutionary War, it is a virtual who's who of the leaders of the Patriots' cause. George Washington, who was an avid angler and was known to carry a coarse fishing kit with him into battle. Benjamin Franklin, William Penn, William Bradford, the Marquis de Lafayette, and Patrick Henry, who coined the battle cry, "Give me liberty or give me death." One can only imagine it was a lot more than just discussion about trout going on around the fire during the evenings in that lodge.
We didn't learn about that in our history classes, right?
No, sir.
That is the most
awesome.
Out of Michael's docuseries, The History of Sport Fishing. That was what I I hung on to the most was this
the fact that these guys, our forefathers, actually formed the fishing club in order for them to get together and discuss what it was going to take to declare our independence from Great Britain. So they were meeting to write the Declaration of Independence and the Constitution in the Schuylkill Fishing Club as it was a fishing club, and otherwise it would have been hung for treason had these guys been caught. So our forefathers wrote and established this country's founding documents under the guise of a fishing club, which I just thought was so cool.
That is really cool, right?
Oh yeah, that's amazing. I read something. Oh gosh, it maybe when I started watching that, it made total sense. I want to say this has probably been 15 years ago. Florida Sports Magazine. I'm not sure who the author was, the writer was, but if they could somehow get all the Florida or the world powers on an offshore boat for one day, I bet you they would work out half the problems they were having just by sharing a gunnel together for a couple hours.
Yep.
You know what I'm saying?
Yep.
I mean, it's just like the people you have the most, differences with, put them on my boat for a day. Let's go. As a salesman, that's, with Ben and stuff, and we go to ICAST, Dave, you've been there many times. Man, we're over taking customers out to dinner unless that's what they want to do. We bring them to the house and I'm like, hey, we're going to cater. Let's go jump on one of the boats for a couple hours. I've secured more great relationships by sharing a bow with somebody than I ever have over a $100 steak.
Yep.
I'll tell you what, you walk around ICAST, everybody knows what you're doing out there. They all want to come and be a part of that. They all want to come to the house because Michael, Stephen rents 2 houses on this spectacular lake, one on one side of the lake, one on the other side. And we bring like 3 bass boats and we just fill them up. I mean, there's like days where there's 6 or 7 guys on a bass. One night, I think there was 10 of us just hanging on to this bass boat.
I don't want to hear that.
But it's just about getting out on the water and fishing, man. Yeah. So much cool stuff happens from fishing.
Yeah.
As you know, Michael, our whole lives, the 3 of us right here, we would not be here right now if it wasn't for fishing.
No chance.
No way. No way. This is if you would have asked me could I make a living and a darn good living, I'll say in the fishing category when I was 15, 16, I'd have told you were nuts. And my first job was working at a sporting goods store. It was called Sports and Rec. It was big in the state of Florida back in the day. I was constantly in there shopping, and I'm walking around the store as a 16-year-old kid, and the old man John that worked there, he goes, "Man, do you want a job?" I'm like, "What are you talking about?" He's like, "You're always here, and you know more about fishing than half of us. Let me see if I can get you a job." Well, they wouldn't hire anybody unless you were 18. They had to go all the way up the whole ladder and damn near to the CEO to get it approved. And I was the only 16-year-old kid that ever worked for the store, and I was back there selling fishing tackle and at 16 years old.
That's so cool.
Yeah, that's where it started. And honestly, I did it through high school and into college. I was playing baseball and wanted to, I had aspirations to pitch in the pros. That wasn't going to happen. I wasn't good enough, and I got hurt. And I said, "Fine, I'll just coach." And I went back to what I was doing, working in Sports Authority. 30 years ago, selling fishing tackle. Had a job while I was waiting for a real job, and I ran into a guy working for a large distributor, and he's like, "Hey, we want to hire you." And I spent 17 years for this distributor, cutting my teeth, selling fishing tackle. That's how it all started. It's weird. I never would have guessed it in a million years.
Well, I think your background in sports, playing competitively, it gave you a foundation, a work ethical foundation that you could build your career out of. So even though you didn't make it to the pros, you'd already won by having all that the intangibles that you learn from being in competitive sports and on a team and fishing. I mean, those things all just blend together into giving you a foundation to be the man you are today. All of us.
Yeah, I give a ton of credit of it to my dad. I have the best dad in the world. I'll argue till the cows come home. The things he taught me to do things the right way, not the quick way kind of thing. how to work. And, you know, I may not be the most talented guy in the room. I may not be the smartest guy in the room, but there's one thing, you're sure as hell not going to outwork me. You know, I'll work myself to where I can't move just about. That's like my MO. But you're 100% right. You know, when I knew baseball wasn't going to be it, I turned into working in the fishing tackle. And I will tell you, I'm a major competitor. I can't stand losing. Dave will tell you about that. And I fished my first redfish tournament when I was 16, and they were making fun of me. It was when I started working in the sporting goods store, and they were like, "Oh, you're the new kid. You got to work the department on Saturday. You can't go fish a tournament." And there was an older gentleman who worked there. It was a bass guy. His name was Eddie. And he looks at me. He goes, "Can you fish?" I said, "Yes, sir." And he goes, "Well, I don't want to put my bass tracker in that nasty salt water. You take my spot and you go kick their butt." And I was like, "Okay." Well, I went out. I actually won first and third. My dad fished with me, and I caught both fish that took first and third, and the guys just looked at me. That's when I was 16. That's kind of where it started. And I got into it, you know, pretty heavily. I fished FLW for a few years. I fished several trails. And it's just, it's the closest thing I have found to kind of itch that itch, if you will, of competing.
Yep.
I mean, it's something about having those starts and doing those tournaments.
Well, you were totally into the redfish thing for a while, and kind of they're like the bluefin out here on the West Coast. They said that the redfish was extinct. They said that they were all gone, right?
It was redfish and snook, and they're the two kings of the inshore. The third one is a trout, right?
Right.
What hurt the inshore game in the state of Florida was the gill nets.
Yeah, I was going to say
they were heavily gill netting here in the 80s.
Unregulated.
They finally passed a law to get rid of the gill nets. A lot of stuff happened. I mean, it was quite the explosion. I remember a little bit as a kid. My dad told me more about anything else. But when the gill nets went away, that's when the inshore fisheries exploded. You know, there's still the pokey guys that are too far offshore screwing with our bait, and that's still an issue there, and water quality and whatever. But that was really the big change when they got rid of the gill nets. I mean, the fish were just everywhere, and that's what turned it. So it is really hard to fish a redfish out. It's really hard to kill a redfish. They're hardy as hell. They go everywhere. They go from everywhere in the entire Gulf Coast, up the East Coast, you know, past North Carolina. They can live in cold water, hot water, deep, you name it. They go offshore. All the fish we're catching inshore are juvenile fish, so they don't become sexual mature until they're roughly north of 27 inches. It may range from 28 to 30, but those smaller fish are what's in our inshore waters. You know, depending where they're at. You know, I've been told a 26-inch fish, which is top of slot for us, that's a 5-6-year-old fish. They may vary depending where you're at, water quality and that kind of stuff. But essentially, we're catching juvenile fish that are in the estuaries growing up. And that's where all regulation, whether it's Texas, Louisiana, Mississippi, or Florida, or the Carolinas have even a smaller slot. There's a slot limit on them. And what it is the state of Florida is 18 to 27 inches. You got to catch them in that slot. They do that because they don't want you catching the babies, because, I mean, they're tiny, right?
Right.
But they don't want you to catch them over 27 inches because now they're made sexual maturity and they can spawn. They're taking care of our next generation. But they grow really fast. They don't grow as fast as a trout does, but they grow super fast. They're hardy, and boy, they like to bite. They're not super hard to catch, even though it can seem that way on tournament day. But it's not unheard to, honestly. You probably don't think I'm nuts, but there's days in Louisiana you can catch 50. It's dumb. They're everywhere, and they're not real smart. Let's put it that way. They'll eat almost anything out there. Now you get a pressured fish. It's been pushed on hard, like in Tampa or on the West Coast or everybody in Jacksonville. They can get finicky and not want to bite. But for the most part, it can be 35 degrees outside, they'll still bite, or it can be 105 degrees outside, they'll still bite.
And most of that fish you're doing in real skinny water, right?
Yeah, yes, sir. So
you
it's
can see the fish, right?
Oh yeah, that's my drug of choice, if you will. It's being able to sight fish them. That's the one thing. If I could only do one thing the rest of my life, it's sight fishing, redfish, and snook. And yes, very, very shallow. You know, it's working for Promar, and I get out there, you know, ever so often. I go fishing with y'all. It's funny, what y'all call shallow is what I call shallow are two different things. What y'all call deep and I call deep are extremely two different things. I had been in my boat years ago, and we were bass fishing, and he starts messing with my sonar, my GPS, and he's like, "Dude, your depth finder's not even set up." I go, "So?" I go, "It tells me how deep it is." "Oh, but the resolution, blah 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 blah." I'm like, "Ben, I don't use it, man." well, how do you know how deep it is? And I'm like, if it's somewhere between the second and third guide on my pole, I'm good. He goes, what? And I stuck my rod to the side of the boat, and I said, right there, the water levels between my second and third guide, my trolling motor will go. That's all I need. It's 1.5 feet deep. He goes, are you kidding me? I'm like, no, that's where I want to be. I go, if it's over like the fourth guide, I'm too deep. I don't want to fish there. And his mind blew. He's like, what are you talking about? And that's just, I want to see the fish. There was a fish, I should have a picture for you. Fortunately, I don't. 2 weeks ago, the tides in Jacksonville are pretty extreme. Maybe not extreme as y'all's, but extreme for us is a 5 to 6 foot change 4 times a day. And if you're only fishing in 3 foot of water, a lot of it's land on high tide or low tide, and only 2 feet deep on high tide. We actually found fish that were pushing so shallow, half his back was out of the water. At one point, I saw his eyeballs come out of the water. I mean, no joke. And we had to watch him push around in literally 4 or 5 inches of water for probably 20 minutes eating shrimp. He finally worked his way, because I couldn't get to him. I couldn't float that shallow. He finally worked his way to us. And it was probably a 50, 60 yard shot. And I put it on his nose. And when I went to pop a jig by his nose, I flicked a shrimp up. He ate the shrimp, missed the jig. On the third cast I got in front of me, he hammered it. He was so shallow. I set the hook on him, handed the pole to my son, let him fight him. When we got into the boat, he had mud caked on his nose because he was trying to dig and swim, and he couldn't because there was no water. That's how shallow he was. And he was 32, 33 inches, weighed, I don't know, 14, 15 pounds, something like that.
Nice fish. Nice fish.
Yeah. So, but it's just comical. Like, we got him to the boat, we net him, and then he was really pissed off because he hadn't fought. He was green.
Yeah, he was still green. So, yeah.
Oh yeah.
He couldn't go anywhere.
No.
He couldn't fight. He couldn't take off.
Yeah. There's the amount of fish you see is what's so impressive. I mean, you'll see schools of them coming on the bank. They're as big as 50 big. Especially in the wintertime, new fish come in and so forth. But I mean, I look for those fish schooled up together or singles floating around that you can pick them off in sight fishing. In my opinion, that's the angling part for us.
Yep.
It's totally what y'all consider in the angling part for y'all. There's totally different. Us is being able to put it in front of a fish without blowing him out. Leading by 5, 6 feet. It's a nice quiet cast, hits the water, doesn't make a bunch of noise, working it to him and him eating it. That's what I'm teaching my son now. He has too much of a habit of wanting to peg him a foot in front of his nose, and that royally pisses off a big red fish that he's sitting in 1.5 feet of water.
Okay.
It's all about the presentation.
I'd want to do the same thing. I'd want to throw it at his nose.
Yeah. You would really make you mad.
I don't think there's anything better than topwater fishing. It's just
so that the site is it. So it's a lot of times we're throwing jigs in the mud. So a redfish's nose is downward turn. It's not like a bass or even, I'm thinking about a tuna is still, they're hitting stuffs topwater constantly. A redfish really doesn't want to hit a topwater bait. They will, and it's hilarious because they'll hit it 3 or 4 times till they finally get it. I've actually watched them have to come out of the water and come on top of the bait just to get it, because how their mouths are built on the bottom. They're meant to root. They're meant to be down. Yep. That's the whole tailing thing you've heard me talk about, and hence why the redfish on my hat. The tailing redfish is what all inshore anglers look for when they're out fishing skinny water. That tail comes up, boom, he's there. It means 2 things. A, they're feeding, because if their tail is up, their nose is down, they're running and eating bait. Okay, if they're just laying like this and sitting there and they're not hunting, they're kind of much hard to get to eat. So that tailing thing is kind of like our version of bow hunting, where you've killed something, you found him, you got a deer coming in. That tailing's the same thing for us. So when you throw baits to them, you don't necessarily want to topwater plug because they're looking down. Their nose is like this in the water. Right. So a lot of times we'll throw a weedless shrimp or a weedless, some kind of fake bait, gulp plastic, whatever, and we want it to fall right in front of his nose. And the whole idea is, and this is first person I ever heard say it was Captain Rick Murphy, who's a legend here in Florida. He's who I grew up watching as a kid. Every time that you're fishing a mud, flat grass, or whatever, and you're throwing a jig, you want that jig to come in contact with the bottom. Hits the bottom and it goes to kick up and it makes a little poof of mud or poof of sand. Yeah. Okay, think about it. You ever see a shrimp on the bottom? When they click off the bottom, they live in a little poof of sand. You're mimicking a shrimp's all you're doing. And so when that fish is rooting and eating up or eating with his tail on him, you want to put it right in front of his nose and pop pretty good to where it makes a disturbance and he'll hit it. he'll hammer.
Tides have a lot to do with the bite.
Sir?
The tides have a lot to do with when they bite.
Yes and no. So
Okay.
I prefer a high outgoing. So it's almost kind of like opening up the gates to a feeding trough. You know, when that tide comes in, it comes in nice and gentle, and it flows to all the back grasses and mangroves and whatever. And all of a sudden, when that water turns to go, any little fish doesn't get to their hiding spot, they're going to get sucked out like pulling the plug, right? And all that water comes out, and those fish will sit right in those creeks, and all the food's just flowing right to them, and they eat. The other thing it does, it eliminates water. I don't like high water so much because there's a billion places for them little turds to go, meaning the redfish, snook, and trout, to hide. I want to decrease the amount of areas they are going to be. And when you pull the plug and that water's going out, they concentrate to certain feeding points, and they bring them out of all their backcountry hiding places. There's just, if you look at an aerial of where I live in Nassau County at the Florida-Georgia border, there is literally a billion miles of creeks and backwater bays and stuff. But when you pull the plug and that water goes out and it's dead low, more than 50% of it is isolated. It's gone. It's not there anymore. They got to pull to the main channels. And that's where I like to target them.
Do you fish for tarpon at all?
I do. I got into it several years ago quite a bit. Honestly, me moving to Texas there for 11 years, shut down a lot of snook fishing for me, a lot of tarpon fishing, that kind of stuff went away. But before I moved, I got into really, really big snook fishing to where I don't know if you can see in camera, but I got a giant one on my wall I caught probably 15 years ago. And then got into the tarpon fishing. It's tarpon will hurt you. They're mean, pissed off fish. I don't like tangling with them north of 70, 80 pounds. They hurt you. You know, they're fun to watch hit and get 2 or 3 jumps out of them, and then I want them to go away. Little guys are a ball, you know, 10 to 20 pounders. Fights not real long. They spend more time in the air than they do in the water. They jump a ton, that kind of stuff. And you get them to the boat, get a nice quick pick, and they're gone.
Yep.
For an 80 plus to 150 to 200 pounders, they will literally kill themselves before they will let you touch them. And they just hurt you. I've caught plenty of the big ones, and I'm over that.
Well, that's what I talked to Michael about last year. We were talking when we were setting this whole thing up, is I didn't understand what everybody was saying until I went to Florida and I fished down there. Jumping a tarpon, I was like, what? You jump in the water? You jump on them? What are you talking about? And they're like, no, you're going to jump 100 of them before you get one. And I'm like, no, you don't know. I know what I'm doing. I'm like, I still haven't caught one. I haven't caught one. I jumped a whole bunch of them, man.
If you bat 500, you're doing very, very well. And that's on big fish. You know, they have an extremely hard mouth, a mouth of solid bone. It's totally shot up really high, so they want to eat off the top of the water column. Little guys, a lot of times, they're jumping before you realize you've even gotten bit. And I mean, they're doing backflips over the water. It's one of the reasons why I love. It's going to sound really, really bad, but we get tired of them and they get in the way when we go to the glades. And I'm not kidding. So we go down there to catch snook. So they're out of season, unfortunately, but I was there a few weeks ago, and the slot is very, very small for snook on the West Coast. It's 20 to 33 inches. And there's no better eating fish, no better warm water eating fish, in my opinion. I mean, I put snook up there with triple tail, mangrove snapper, maybe Dorado. That's it. That's my top 4. Cold water fish, never had much of it, but snook are phenomenal. So when we're snook fishing down there, the juvie tarpon get in the way. They're 10 times more aggressive. And it's like, I grew up, honestly, cussing them. Like, my dad would get mad. I mean, we're jumping 20-pound tarpon. He's like, damn it, I can't get rid of these damn tarpon. We got to find some snook. And so I had that in my head, and I would get down there and I'd jump tarpon, and people would look at me because I'd get mad. And they're like, what are you talking about? I'm like, well, I'm here to catch a 35-inch snook kind of thing. So 35-inch snook's hard to trick. An equal-sized tarpon is not. They'll eat anything. You put it in front of their nose, they're going to bite it. It's not like a 100-pound fish. But Dave, you're totally right. Not talking circles. You tried those big fish. If you have 8 hookups and not even touched them, just leader 4 of them. Just get the leader in your rod tip. It's considered a catch. They're that hard.
Yeah, the guys that I went with told me, oh, you're gonna be blown away when the first fish takes, it's gonna come flying out of the water and you're gonna stand there like a zombie. And I'm like, no way. I know what I'm doing. I know. And I'll tell you what, I was just frozen. I was so frozen. I was like, huh? That was on my rod. And then I threw out again, and then I was frozen again. I couldn't believe the size of these fish that were just launching themselves out of the water. And I never even, and the guy's all, that was on your bait. I'm like, what? He's like, yeah, that thing had your bait in his mouth, you dummy. You let it go. And I'm like, wow.
Yeah. And these are 200-pound fish in like 20 feet of water.
Exactly.
No, not even 20. So that's yeah, she catch them in 20. Don't get me wrong. You catch them like down the beach and stuff. That's really not where they go aerial. And this is my opinion. You take it for what it is. The fish that go really aerial, you're hooking them in 5 foot of water, 6 foot.
And they're 200 pounds.
Where when the second they feel something in their mouth, it's in their instincts to just go airborne and shake their head as hard as they violently can. I had a guy refer to it. It's essentially like taking 2 metal trash can lids and slamming them together as hard as you possibly can. And that's what it sounds like when you hook a 150-pound poon and their gill rakers and their gills are all together. It's like slamming 2 metal trash cans together at 100 miles an hour, and that's it. They just hurt you. I mean, I've caught a few by myself, caught a few with buddies, and I'm just like, keep that. They're, you ever have one greyhound on you before?
I never had the opportunity. I never had them on that long.
I've only seen it a couple times where, I don't know why, when you hook them, instead of coming up and throwing their head like a bass, they come up and they act like a dolphin, and they'll call it greyhounding, and they almost jump constantly, and they're nose down, and they're trying to clear as much water as humanly possible. I hooked one of the glades. God, it's probably been 15 years ago. That fish hooked me. We figured she was well over 6.5 foot long, probably 170 plus pounds. And she hit and she dumped 100 yards, 20 seconds, and greyhound the entire time and just dumped me. And the last one I finally saw, she came up and threw her head. And I look back at my buddy in the back of the boat, and I'm like, what could I have done? He's like, nothing, dude. You showed up to a gunfight with a knife because you weren't letting that paddle. And you just tip your hat. It just is what it is.
They're so prehistoric looking. I mean, they're just magnificent, magnificent fish. Those big giant gill plates.
And there's, very little known about. They're mysterious fish. There's a different breed from what I've been told that live down in the Caribbean. They're shorter and way heavier, where the fish we have in Florida are a little bit longer and not as heavy. How they migrate up the coast and where they spawn, there's not that much known about them. I haven't really gotten that deep into it. I got some buddies that just eat, sleep, and breathe it, but there's really not a ton known about them. There's more known about redfish and snook and whole 9 yards, but not tarpon. They're a crazy fish. They find them offshore in hundreds of foot of water in giant schools, but then you also can find them laid up. I never forget it. It was back in the glades again, probably 15 years ago. So we do know this. They migrate up the state of Florida. They start migrating in March. They work their way all the way up to Louisiana. They spawn somewhere in there, then they come back down the coast of Florida to winter in the Keys and the Caribbean. Well, from what I've understood and been told, when they're moving north, they're heavier. They haven't spawned yet, and when they come back down, they're lighter and they're just as long, but they're not as heavy, not as fat, and they tend to lay up more. They tend to lay up more when they're coming back down. When I mean lay up, they won't move, and they'll get behind islands in 2 and 3 foot of water. 100-pound fish in 3 foot of water, just laying there. First time I saw it, I didn't know what I was looking at. So the water down in the glades can get very stained, very almost like milky white. And we pulled behind a key called Pavilion Key. My buddy Chris Chapman and I did. We pulled back there, and I'm like, what is that? I go, is it a shark? And we see like this fin sticking out of the water. And I'm like, dude, it can't be a shark. Shark's going to move. I mean, a nerf shark will sit there, but that's not a nerf shark. And so I fire a bait in front of it. Of course, want to see what it is. It was an 80-pound tarpon. It was laid in like literally 2 foot of water, hit this jig, and came out of the water instantly. We just looked at each other. We're like, oh my gosh, what did we find? We jumped 11 in the next hour. They were all just laid up behind this island. To the one point I jumped one, he damn near jumped in the boat on us. because I hooked him right off the trolling motor. So it's just, they're a crazy fish. The same fish will be in Bogaram Pass, hundreds of them, and try not to eat them by sharks, in the 100-foot passes and stuff. So they'll go just about anywhere.
And in the history of sport fishing, Michael, isn't that like the first real giant game fish ever caught on a rod and reel?
Yep, the sturgeon was, the tarpon was the first big fish that was ever captured on an old, basically a freshwater bass reel that they were trying to use for striped marlin. And back in the 1800s, they thought there was no possible way there was anyone who could ever catch a fish over 100 pounds on a rod and reel. They just said it was impossible. Impossible. You can't do it. And with the gear you had back then, I can see why. But down in Florida, they got the first tarpon, and I think Woods was credited with the first tarpon over 100 pounds.
Jeez.
Yeah. And it really that opened the floodgates for the sport, because once that word got out that he had caught a fish over 100 pounds, and it got to the West Coast, the guys out here started trying to catch the tuna, the big tuna, and the tarpon opened up. It's the first big pelagic game fish ever captured on a rod and reel. It was in Florida.
Wow,
that's pretty cool history.
It kind of. It brings up like snook. I'm sure you know what the word snook means, right? It means it's called soapfish. If you ever eat a snook, I mean, how did you make fish 100 plus years ago? You cooked it with a skin on, right? That's how all the Native Americans did it. It's how most white men did it. You cooked it with skin on, right? You do that with a snook, and it's like eating a bar of ivory soap. It's disgusting. It's horrible. I don't know who, but somewhere along the line, someone took that skin off a snook fillet. And boy, was it a game changer. I don't know when it happened. Probably the same dude who introduced black and redfish in Louisiana, 70 years ago. But when that happened, it put them boogers in danger. Before that, I remember, reading clips and stuff to where the Seminole Indians, they hated snook because they basically just ran gill nets or nets across creeks. And the snook were so big and so ferocious, they would destroy their nets because a snook's got razor sharp gill plates on. I mean, they'll lay you open if you grab the wrong way. And so, I mean, they hated the things. And that's where the name soapfish came from. Someone filleted that booger. And now it is the most sought after inshore species in the state. So much so, don't quote me on it, but I think it's equivalent to like if you're caught poaching one, taking one out of season and or selling, it's like a $5,000 fine per fish and or time in jail. They don't play. They literally put your butt under the jail if you're caught killing a snook or caught with illegal fish.
And I love posting pictures of the snook we catch down here in Mexico because it's fair game. It's full speed, any size you want to catch. And I love posting those pictures and watching those people in Florida. They just come out of the woodwork to tell me what a piece of garbage I am. They just
dude, it's gotten, and I will tell you, it has gotten so skewed. Makes me sound old, like an old fuddy-duddy pain in the butt. You put it, I just about won't show snook on social media anymore. I just don't do it. I'll do redfish all day long because no one really cracks on that. But if God forbid, if you put a picture on social media and you're not holding a snook the right way, guys lose their mind. No matter if it's a 30-inch fish in season and his butt's going in the cooler, you hold him vertical, and you put on social media, you get blasted by a million people telling you don't know what you're doing.
Yeah.
I'm like, dude, it really didn't matter because a fillet knife went across his butt, an hour later.
Well, I got a wheelbarrow full of them, and I post that every once in a while. It's pretty spectacular. I'm like, no, don't show that. I'm like showing it. I'm like, check it out. This is a wheelbarrow.
But it's also the same.
Full of snook.
It's also the same thing to where if God forbid, if you eat a largemouth bass, don't do that. That's devil words. I grew up eating them boogers. Yeah. That's what I grew up eating for, fish dinners when I was, a kid. We ate more bass than anything.
I can't wait to get back up into the States and fillet one and make a fillet video about largemouth bass. I'm super excited to do that. Well, we almost did it with you.
We almost did it at ICAST, remember?
Yeah, we did.
We still may have to do that.
Yeah, you should see the fish on that lake, Michael. They come up like the bluefin, foaming, man. It's so exciting. I'm like running around on the boat. Foamer. They're like, what? What are you talking about?
So you've been to Orlando, Michael?
Yes.
I'm assuming you have. Yeah, so all those lakes, once upon a time, they were all spring fed one time or another, and some still are. And the water's just gin clear. I mean, it's crystal clear. You can see the bottom in 25 foot of water,
That's
right? And so all those lakes are known for having schoolers on them. There's just a mass of fish that anywhere from 1 to 3 pounds. And when the light gets down, they force all the minnows up, and they just go ballistic on them every evening. Especially if it rained, the lake slicks off. You just basically drive around, the minnows come up, and they go a chewing on them. And that's what he's talking about. So I grew up doing that as a kid. I remember all the lakes in Florida will do that in Central, in West Coast, East Coast. I remember kneeboarding as a kid, 12, 13 years old, and my dad would pull me around kneeboarding until the lake would slick off. And I remember kneeboarding through a school of fish as they're feeding on these minnows, and I'm driving through on my kneeboard behind the boat, trying to catch them in midair and hit them as I'm kneeboarding through them. They would stop, get in the boat, and throw plastic worms in their paws and catch them. I thought that was normal.
Yeah, that was normal.
And then we got a couple of minutes left here, and we're going to end the show. But Stephen, just me and Michael, just tell us, how big's the biggest alligator you ever got, and what is it like hunting alligators? Because that's something I won't ever do it. You don't have to worry about me because there's too many bugs. But
first off, alligators are so overrated. It's not kidding. Yes, you got to 9 o'clock at creek when it's eating. The biggest one I think I've put in the boat amazingly is only like 11 and change. I've hooked several over 13. Yeah, 11 foot and change. So that's really not that big. I mean, in the grand scheme of things, that's not giant. I've hooked several north of 13 and just, didn't turn them, didn't get them in. I've killed several between 10 and 11 foot. I killed a big female. I think she should have been bigger in that. Was right at 11 a couple of years ago, and she went dang near 400 pounds. And when we cleaned her, I think she was hit when she was little. And I shouldn't say she. It was a male. Her tail had been cut, so that gator probably should have been pushing more 12, but it was only a little over 11 and stuff because it was super fat and big head on him. Females historically will only get about 10 foot, and the males are the ones that get really big. There's nothing harder to deal with than about 9.5, 10 foot pissed off female, and they're a handful. You mean 11 foot male all day?
You mean hooking them? Explain to us, and then we're gonna get out of here. But explain to us.
So you can catch them on bait, which is kind of boring. Where you put bait out and they'll grab it essentially, and you fight them to the boat. I don't prefer to do that. I really go hunt them, where I'm looking for their heads being up, and I have essentially a surf rod 8-footer with the 8,000 size reel with 100-pound braid, and I make my own snatch hooks, which is a 4X Gamakatsu hook, and I put a weight on the bottom of it, and I cast to them. And I can cast pretty well. I can, normally can take the wings off a gnat at 50 yards red fishing, and I can nail a gator pretty far too. And that's where we go and hunt for them. We'll throw a snatch hook over their head, or gauge where their body is over their head. You don't really want to hook them in the head. There's too much bone there. You can't get penetration. So amazingly, you want to hook them in the side, get them in the back of the tail, or when their feet are soft, you can get hooked into the web of the feet pretty good. And once you hook them, then all hell breaks loose. You fight into the boat. Once you get in the boat, and you have a second partner that puts a harpoon in them, try to get 2 lines in them, bring them up, and they're going to be really pissed for about 15, 20 minutes, hard fighting. But then they're air breathing, right? They've been underwater most times. When they come up to get some air, and they'll take a gas for a second or two, that's your chance. We hit them with a bang stick in the back of the head. We can't use rifles or shotguns on public grounds, which is why I hunt on public lakes for them in the state of Florida. So we have to use a bang stick. And essentially all it is a percussion on the end of a pole, and you've got to fight them both sides, and you hit them with a bang stick in the back of the head. And then once you do that, it's lights out, bring their head up, tape it up, and then roll them in the boat.
Now, I apologize for my ignorance, Steve, but are they any good to eat? What's the consumption?
They are. So amazingly, they don't yield much meat in them. So for example, a 10-footer, I mean, you're going to be lucky if you get 60 pounds out of them.
Really?
Their skin weighs a ton. The best meat on a gator is 2 places, called the jelly roll, which is the backstrap loins on their tail. That's probably the most sought after. I prefer the jowls, which is the meat around the jawbone, the jaw meat. The jaw meat's the best. It's phenomenal. You can pull meat off of the back of their legs, throughout the entire tail. The older and bigger they get, their meat will get lined with fat, and you do not want to eat gator fat. It's nasty. It's horrible. So If you've ever been to a restaurant, you've had gator tail and it was really chewy, not good. It had nothing to do, in my opinion, with the age of the gator. It was more about the person who cleaned the gator and processed it. You really got to take your time and get after it to, go after the meat, because the fat will lace throughout the actual meat in doing it. So yeah, I mean, a young gator will be more tender, a little more white meat and that kind of stuff, but it's more about how it was processed than anything else. I'll give you an idea how hard to clean a gator. I've cleaned way too many in my day. I will clean 10 deer over one gator all day. They're that hard. They're that much a pain in the butt. Their skin's super thin. You can nick it when you're skinning them. You got to cut the initial cut with a razor. I can go on and on and on. It's you're mounted many heads. Gator hunting's work, a lot of work.
Do you sell the skins?
So I mainly trade them. So a lot of places, if you would bring them a gator, they'll process it for you, and they either keep the hide or the meat, vice versa. There for many years, the hide was worth more than the meat. It's not so much anymore. It's about equal. The meat's as valuable as the hide is, because there's so many farms out there that are selling primo hides and kind of stuff. I'll process the entire thing on certain gators, and I ran into a gentleman years ago, and he doesn't do it anymore, where every time I bring him a green hide, a hide that's been tanned or skinned out and properly salted and rolled, I would give it to him. He did the leather works. He would then pay to have that skin tanned, if you will, in whatever color I wanted. Then he would give me 2 pieces of the leather work in return. So, for example, he's made me 2-3 handgun cases. He's made me 2-3 belts, Bible cover, that kind of stuff. So I got a wallet. The first I think 8-footer I ever killed 15 years ago. I still have the same wallet, but it's a gator skin. Pretty
That's
cool.
so cool.
Nice. See, I just wanted to talk about it a little bit. People out here on the West Coast have no idea.
Yeah, we don't.
So, not to go full circle on the glades, but that's another thing. The glades, we have Florida crocs, not as alligators. So you have to go a little further back. This trip I'm going on here in a few days, my father just had knee replacement surgery here a few months ago. This is his first trip going. So I'm taking my son, just turned 13. My dad will be there, and I'm taking the Pathfinder day that you ran at ICAST, running it down there, and we're going 56 or 57 miles back one way by boat. And when you get that far down, you're more than halfway to Flamingo from Chokoloskee. We'll see crocodiles, guaranteed. Like, there'll be crocs, alligators in the same water with bottlenose dolphins, manatees, all mixed together in the same river, living together. It's pretty cool.
Very cool.
Now, the crocodiles are way more aggressive, or no?
No, so it's the Florida native. There's 2 crocs down here. What's one they call a little salty. There's a salty that's like 6.5 foot. He's pissed at the world. He's always mad. You don't mess with him. Then there's the regular Florida crocodiles. They're as docile as an alligator. They're there to eat leftovers. They're the vulture of the sea. They eat all the dying and decaying stuff because you just about can't make them sick and can't kill them. They're not aggressive at all. But there's a little salty that's like 6 foot. He's super light gray. Yeah, you don't mess with him. You don't. But the big crocs that are down there that you've seen pictures of in Flamingo that are 13 foot, they sun themselves on the bank just like an alligator does.
Nice.
Different world.
Well, thank you very much for your time today, Stephen. You have a Merry Christmas, you and your family. I hope you guys have a great Christmas, get to spend some time with the family, and then I can't even imagine going into the Everglades. That's incredible. And your son is so blessed to have you. That is so cool for him.
3 generations on this trip. That's cool, Steve.
Yeah. It's something very, very special to me. We first did it, to give you an idea, when I lived in North Texas, I was driving to the Glades at least once a year and was either bringing my daughter and my son down there. And we did it. Oh gosh, my son had just turned 8, and we had 3 generations, took a ton of pictures, really, really cool with my dad and I and my son next to me. We give you an idea, round trip trailer was 3,200 miles. Not kidding. I was wearing boat trailer tires out. The current trailer underneath my Hughes, it's not the current one, it's the previous one. I think I estimated between 60 and 70,000 miles on the boat trailer. Had to buy another trailer because I was destroying it. And so this one's probably got 25, 30,000 miles on already because I was making that trip.
Wow.
But it's worth it, right? 3 generations down there, getting back to watch my dad, watch my son. It's priceless.
It is. It's priceless. You just nailed it.
Yeah, it is. And
it's what the sport's all about.
Yes.
Absolutely. Gang, thank you very much, everybody. I hope you guys have a great day tomorrow, Christmas Eve. We're going to be live with you tomorrow. We're going to have a show for you tomorrow. But if you can't make it, I understand. Family's in town and everybody's doing Christmas. There will be no podcast Christmas Day. We danced around it a little bit, but we're not doing it. And then we'll be back with you on Friday. And then Michael Fowlkes and I will be back here with you on Tuesday next week, right before New Year's. You guys have a great week. See you later. Steve, you have a good time. Michael, thank you very much for a great show again.
Thanks everybody for